right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the honor and the privilege to have former Bellator middleweight champion and former multiple-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion, Mr. Rafael Lovato Jr. on the show today. Rafael, thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate you coming on. How you doing?
Doing great, man. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So let's just get into it then.
Sounds good.
So I know you're a lifelong martial artist, and Jiu-Jitsu is your background. Was your first martial art? Am I right about that?
Actually, I came up in the JKD world, Jeet Kune Do. My father was a Jeet Kune Do instructor, and that's how he found out about Jiu-Jitsu, and then we started learning Jiu-Jitsu together around the same time when I was a teenager. But the very first martial arts I came up in were under the JKD sort of realm, and then Jiu-Jitsu was after.
So are you a big fan of Bruce Lee then?
Oh yeah, that was after my dad. Bruce Lee was probably my first hero.
For sure. Anybody that's involved in martial arts, you gotta have respect for that man. He's a forefather.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so how did you go from Jiu-Jitsu to MMA? How did that transition come up?
Well, being that I grew up in JKD, which was very much like the first MMA, Bruce Lee being so far ahead of his time, he understood how you should take the best of all martial arts and put it together and create your own self-defense system. And so that's what I grew up in. And when I first started learning jiu-jitsu, it was very much for real life self-defense. It wasn't for sport. It was as a necessity to add to your martial arts system of self-defense. We knew that ground fighting was the best way to control somebody and to protect yourself without the risk of getting hit. And so the very first jiu-jitsu that I did, there was no intention of training to win competitions. I was training to really basically do MMA style jiu-jitsu. And the only time that we ever took off the gi, whenever I was a kid and learning jiu-jitsu, when we would take off the gi, would be to put on little gloves and do like MMA style jiu-jitsu. I didn't really do no gi. If there was no gi on, it was more like MMA grappling. And my father had a fight team back in that time. He was just putting all of our martial arts background together. We had boxing, Muay Thai, of course, jiu-jitsu, and we were trying to get more wrestling as well, being that we're in Oklahoma, having wrestlers come through. So that was my upbringing, and until I was a black belt, and I really focused in on jiu-jitsu and was like, okay, now this is all I have time for, and I kind of stopped training and doing stand-up martial arts, and I didn't really do MMA sparring anymore, just here and there for fun. But I put all my energy, all my focus into making history as an American in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was basically my whole 20s. And then by the end, when I was around 30, I was like, man, this isn't really pushing me the same. It's not, I don't have the same fire for jiu-jitsu that I did when I was younger. And that's when I really said, okay, it's time for me to step into the cage. I always knew that I would wanted to do that because of my background. And I knew that would be the ultimate test for myself as a martial artist. But I didn't want to go to MMA at a time where maybe I would look back and say, what if I would have stayed in jiu-jitsu a little longer? I could have done this, I could have done that. I got to a point where I was really, happy and proud of what I achieved in jiu-jitsu, and there was no looking back. It's like, all right, it's time for the next thing. And then I made the transition to MMA. And I didn't really think I was gonna enjoy it as much as I did, just being that it's a different environment, and I really have like kind of the martial arts mindset, like I said, what I grew up in, and I didn't know if how it would fit in the MMA world, but really, uh, the more that I had, camp after camp, and I got to experience all of my martial arts life coming together. My Muay Thai coach, my Jiu-Jitsu coach, my father, my wrestling coach, strength and conditioning coach. Everyone that literally means the most to me in my life, and I've been on this journey with for so many years. They were all coming together to help me prepare and be at my best for these fights. And I just had so much fun with them. It's just the camp experience, all the memories and the moments that we got to share, and all of us being on a mission together. And that's what made me kind of, all right, what's next? What's next? Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And yeah, that was it.
So it was kind of like you'd already accomplished one world. Let's see what else is out there, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, in jiu-jitsu, I won my first world title at 24. So I had already kind of accomplished my life goal at a fairly early age. But I, at that point in time, like, and still to this day, Americans in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or non-Brazilians in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, um, at the black belt level, we're not winning near as much as the Brazilians. Now, these days, there are several non-Brazilians in each weight class that are at the top, that are right there. But as far as who's standing on the podium at the end of at the World Championships, there's maybe a handful of guys that are non-Brazilians that are reaching the male adult black belt podium, by the end of the weekend. So, and back, 10 years ago or over 10 years ago, when I was there, it was even less. It was like one or two, at the most. And so, at that point in time, I achieved my goal so early, but I didn't feel like I was at my best yet, and so I stayed in the sport longer, to obviously win more titles, but at the same time, I really wanted to be an inspiration and kind of be a figure for non-Brazilians in the sport. And me being a kid from Oklahoma, never having a black belt instructor here in my state, I just wanted to show everyone that no matter where you were located, where you're from, and what your your means are, or what your access is, you can do it. You can get there. You can get to a high level, and just try to inspire people. So I kept going, and was able to win some more things and do things that no non-Brazilian had ever done. But really, the bottom line was I just wanted to inspire others, and until I felt like I had done enough and I had made my mark, that's when I said, all right, now it's time to go to MMA.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So last week, Bellator just released a letter that you're officially retired. But I remember about a year ago, you stated on the Joe Rogan show that you're just sidelined. So I just wanted to see from what you had to say, are you officially retired or just retired for the time being?
No, I never officially retired. Yeah, the Joe Rogan show, I was on there in January. And honestly, if I could go back and I knew there was going to be a pandemic that would have stopped everything, I probably wouldn't have even kind of sidelined myself the way that I did. I was kind of feeling pressure, number one, just to let everyone know what was going on, because I had been pretty much lying to people all over, people close to me as well, very close to me, because I didn't want them to know what was going on. But I thought I was going to be fighting in January, and all the things with the athletic commission and not being able to get approved and all that stuff kept delaying. And so I was like making up stories to everyone. I was like, oh, well, Bellator wants us to do this or do that. And, yeah. So I just kind of like was making stuff up to push the fight back further and further. And then I was like, man, now it's, coming up on 7 months. I still haven't defended or, even announced when I would defend my belt. And I just wanted to come clean. I just wanted to get all that weight off my shoulders and just let everybody know all at once. It doesn't matter if you're a close friend that I see every day or someone that I just message periodically, people that know me, whatever. I was like, if I go on the Joe Rogan show, everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to know, and I can control the narrative. You know what I mean? And I can tell everyone what is really happening from my side. And so that's why I did that. And like I said on that show, I'm sidelined. It was never. I never wanted to retire like that. I wanted to hold that belt as long as possible. And of course, being a fighter, being a competitor, you want to go out on your own terms. You don't want someone telling you you can't, and that's it. And so I had more doctor visits and things scheduled for the spring, but of course, the pandemic hit and we're all stuck in quarantine and all that, and all of that got kind of pushed to the side. But here recently, just in September, I finally was able to see a doctor that was recommended to me, and someone that I was going to see months ago. And I got more good news. People, the most knowledgeable people, the specialists that deal with my condition, they're all saying the same thing, that the risk would be very, very, very minimal. They say less than 1% chance that something would actually happen due to, head trauma or getting hit in my head with this condition. The locations of the angiomas that I have are basically as good as they could be given my condition. So I'm not a high risk, person with this condition, and so they're all very favorable for me to continue fighting. Now, you know, Bellator released that. I didn't have any conversation with them. I think they were just kind of trying to put I don't know, just it was with a big thing. They're talking about a lot of fighters, and they just maybe wanted to officially include me in there since it seems like I'm done. But I'm not giving up hope. I'm going to take all the information that I've gathered from these doctors this year and present it to the commission and see what I can do to get licensed and get approved to fight again. And then we'll see what happens from there. If it's with Bellator or another organization, of course, I would love to come back to Bellator, but I don't know what they'll let me do. I don't know who's going to want to, take the risk. Like I said, it's very low, but maybe organizations might not want to risk it. I don't know. This is such a unique situation, unique scenario. No one really knew what to do. And that's why all we could think of was like, all right, I'm just going to go on the Joe Rogan show and tell everyone, what's going on. Because Bellator didn't know how to handle it. These commissions have gone back and forth. Europe approved me, and then months later they said, no, you shouldn't have fought, da 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 da. It's just a big long thing. And for me, my goal would be to be able to get approved and come back to at least do one more. If they would only let me do one, I'll take one. Just so my team and my family, we can come together one more time, knowing that's it, and go out on our own terms, our own way, and have one last dance, right?
Right. Fair enough. So that kind of ties me to what the next thing I want to ask you is, how did it feel last week seeing Gegard Mousasi walk away with your belt that you had to give up for reasons outside your control?
First off, I was very excited for that fight. I think it's arguably the most experienced, technically sound fighters under the Bellator banner. Matched together. Between the two of them, they have like like nearly 80 wins, between the two of them. So I was really excited for it. And it wasn't until the fight was happening and I'm watching it that I was kind of like, I was getting a little bummed out. You know what I mean? Of course, I would love to be there going into this year before I realized all this stuff, like that I was going through was gonna force me to the sidelines. Um, my goal was to defend that belt all year and headline big arenas. Obviously the year went a complete, different direction no matter what, whether it's for my brain condition, that set me to the side. But even if I was going to continue fighting, everything still got stopped, with the pandemic. But in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do Madison Square Garden. We were going to fight in LA at the Forum. That was set. That's where I thought I was going to defend my belt in January. And I was just so excited to have climbed the mountain and now be at the top and get to enjoy the benefits and really put my team on the map and really kind of cement our legacy in another world, the MMA world. But of course everything happened, and I had a long time to kind of process now, and I've gotten to a good place. Early in the year, I was still really depressed about it and very emotional. But it's been several months. I mean, practically the year's almost over. So I've had all year to kind of get to a good place, and of course the pandemic forced us all to reevaluate and just be present and be grateful for what we have. And so I found a good place, and I've made my comeback to Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been focused on my school. But when I was watching that fight, I definitely, I wasn't like just like super, super emotional, but there was definitely some moments where I'm like, man, that should be me. That should be me, and um, yeah, it is what it is. I was definitely hoping for a more exciting fight. I thought it was going to be a little more competitive and have a little more to it. It was kind of straightforward, but yeah, what can I say? It was a little watch, but congrats to Masasi for getting the job done and basically dominating that fight, getting his belt back.
Right. So, did you know going into the Musasi fight that you had the cavernoma? And just in case nobody knows what we're talking about, cavernoma, I believe it is a condition of the brain where the blood vessels are larger than they should be, correct?
Sort of. So you're very close. Basically, your brain develops these blood vessels and they collect together and almost like vines. And so you'll have these little bundles of these extra vessels, and as they kind of wrap together, they become very susceptible to bleeding. And it's not like anything rapid. It's very slow. They use the term ooze, like they ooze blood little by little, um, and over time, it can cause problems, especially depending on the location of these collections. If they're near an important area, like deep inside your brain, um, things happen, right? People will lose their vision. They can get paralyzed on one side of their body, lose function on one side, and seizures, going on the more extreme end, even coma and worst case death, due to the bleeding in the brain. So I'm not the lowest end of the cavernoma. The lowest end is you have one little collection. And it's It's kind of rare, but it's not that rare. 1 in 500 people have it, and maybe more. The problem is most people don't get brain scans done, until there's an issue. And so if you have an issue, then you get the scan done, and then you find out, oh, I have cavernoma, or it's a situation like mine where you're required to get a scan done. But it's very likely that there's tons and tons of people out there that have this that just don't know, because they haven't had any symptoms. And that was my case until I was required to get the scan done. But on the low end, you have one. I'm a little more in the middle, because I have several. But as I said, they're all in very favorable locations, and I've never experienced any symptoms. The worst one of mine, that's the biggest one, is on the very outside of my brain. So it's not in the layers through in the very middle. It's more on the outskirts. So if I ever did have to get surgery done on that, it would be probably very safe and easy surgery to do and come back from. But at this point, because it's not causing any issues, there's no reason to do that. So yeah, I was required to get the scan done before the fight with Musasi, to get approved to fight in London, where the title fight was. And that was the first location that I'd ever fought in where they required to get a scan done. And so I went in to get it done. Just, okay, it's kind of like your little to-do list of things. Sometimes you have to get an eye exam, you got to get physical, and all, blood work, all the normal stuff. And so I'm like, all right, let me knock this out. And not thinking anything of it, because like I said, I've never had any issues, never been knocked out, no concussions, nothing like that. And basically the technician for the MRI was like, hey, I'm seeing some things on here and it doesn't look good. And I was like immediately shocked, like, what are you talking about? And he didn't really have a great delivery. He was kind of like, because I had my paper, I was like, hey, can you, at the end of this, I need you to sign off to say that I'm normal and I'm good to fight. And so he knows I'm a fighter, and he's looking at this paper, and he's like, one of the things he says to me, in his kind of brash delivery was you should really find another profession. You shouldn't be doing this, da 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 da. And I there's no way I'm going to sign this paper. And I'm like, and it hit me all at once. And keep in mind, I'm in camp. At this point, I'm 6 weeks away from the fight. And so it all just came down like a ton of bricks, like, man, trying to process this. And so I went on a long kind of journey of seeing several doctors, trying to gather more information, figure out what it is. I never heard of cavernoma before, figure out what it is and what are the dangers. And I'm training every day, getting ready for this fight. And I'm trying to like process it and like, man, am I just killing myself? Am I hurting myself? Like, I'm getting hit in the head sparring. A couple days after I find out I have this disease in my brain, and it was a mess. And of course, I talk about it in a lot of detail on the Joe Rogan show, exactly what I went through. But I was an emotional roller coaster, and it came down to the wire. Finally, I found a doctor who had a lot of experience with my condition, and he was just like, man, until you have symptoms, there's no treatment, there's nothing we can do, and you should just live your life and do what it is you do. The risk is very, very low, and there's no proof or evidence that says getting hit in the head is going to make it worse. It could get worse at any point in time. I could be sleeping, I could be driving, and all of a sudden I might have some sort of symptom. Something could happen. So it can change at any point in time. Normally, it's not like most people that really have problems with this are much older, because the time, for it to bleed little by little by little by little over, decades, and build and become an issue, you know, it needs that time. And so, you know, like I said, he was favorable for it, and he wrote the letter, and I sent it in, and come clean. I said, Bellator, look, here's the situation. You know, let's see what the commission says. And then the commission took their time, man, and so I went from 6 weeks. It took a whole month of seeing doctors, sending it all in, and it wasn't until 2 weeks before the fight did I finally get confirmation from the commission that they were going to approve me to fight. And so that whole time, oh my God, I was a mess, man. I was a mess. I'm trying to stay confident. You know, I'm not sleeping, and I'm not training well at all. I'm emotional. I don't even know if I'm going to fight or not. And it was definitely the most trying time of my life, because, you know, that's all I wanted was the opportunity to fight for the title. And especially against a legend like that, I really wanted to test myself against someone of that caliber. And I didn't even know if it was going to happen or not. You know, I felt like like it could all be taken away, and I wouldn't even get that chance. So thankfully, it happened, and we had the opportunity. Win or lose, that's all I cared for. And that's why I was able to leave everything in that cage, because of all the stuff we went through just to get there. And I had the chance. So, you know, looking at it, I know there are people that are like, oh, don't risk it, don't risk it. You know, it is a beautiful kind of ride off into the sunset story. But like I said, I didn't get to close the book. You know, someone else closed it for me. And so if I could just get at least one more to go out on our terms, that would be my next dream come true. And we'll take it from there.
Well, it looks like everything worked out, because if that happens to be your last fight, at least you retire undefeated and champion, right?
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
sorry, what was that?
No, I just said definitely. Yeah.
My
That's
last
good.
question I got out here is, you being a specialist in MMA. I know you started Jeet Kune Do, but everyone kind of viewed you as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and you used that a lot to your advantage in the cage.
Mm-hmm.
With you being a specialist, do you think that gave you a certain level of advantage in the cage? And what are your views on specialists in the cage opposed to an overall mixed martial artist? Who do you think has the advantage in the fight?
Yes, I do think it gave me a big advantage for sure. I think, you know, the truth is, everyone is so good nowadays. So being a specialist doesn't give you as much of an advantage as what it used to. Um, you know, you really need to at least have two pieces. You know, if you look at basically all the great champions, you know, they all had at least two pieces, two facets to their game that really made them great, really made them dangerous. And then there's a special, you know, a special couple, I would say, or few, that were great at maybe three areas. You know, so for example, if you have really great jujitsu, you need to get really good wrestling too.
Yeah.
You know, and you maybe you put those two together, or maybe it's wrestling and then striking in some shape or form. A lot of wrestlers end up becoming really good with their hands, you know, and either they use their wrestling to keep the fight on the feet and try to knock the person out. Or if the worst case scenario, they can also use their wrestling to win rounds, and you know, control the fight. But the best always develop at least two. I think for me, you know, most people kind of maybe underestimated my striking abilities. Um, and being that I was long, and I usually had the reach advantage, it really helped me. And I developed my striking game with my coach, Mauricio Amado, who's one of the leaders of Evolução Thai, and they have direct lineage with Rafael Cordero. All right, so Mauricio and his brother Dita, who is a very well-known striker. He fought K1 fights, and you know, was really deadly. He even dropped Buakaw in a Muay Thai fight, and they went to the extra round because it was even. So, you know, that's the kind of level of strikers. They're first generation black belts under Rafael from Shoebox. And so he was so genius in the way that he designed my striking game with, you know, if you see, I did a lot of kicks to the head, a lot of flying knees, you know, jumping knees and things where if I wasn't confident in my ground game, I was definitely exposing myself to get taken down. But because most people didn't want to go to the ground with me, they would never think of trying to take me down. And so, you know, it gave me a special opportunity because the closer they came, the more I could set up my takedown. You know, they're getting into range where I can clinch them and put them down. And if they try to stay far and away, I usually had the reach advantage, and I could throw a lot of these things that would make people want to get closer to me. Because, you know, they could see my feet flying around, you know, and my long arms and my knees, and it made them want to come closer to clinch or whatever, or at least get into a range where then I can work my takedown. And so, you know, like I said, I feel like my striking was a big piece into my success. And you know, wrestling is also, it's a different kind of wrestling in MMA. You see it before, you know, you can see really high level D1 guys, national champions, multiple time national champions. Sometimes their wrestling doesn't do as well in MMA because they don't have the striking to set it up. And it's a different type of wrestling. You're not hand fighting anymore, you know, to get in. Now you have to strike to get in. And so it's the way you connect everything together, you know. You know, you see GSP, who never wrestled ever, you know, competitively in the sport. But he had the timing, he had the striking. If you land a jab, you can get to the leg, you know, 100%. And so, for me, I'll always kind of favor the specialist entry into MMA, because then it helps set up the other things. You know, if you're afraid of my ground game, it makes the striking easier. You know, and if I can connect on the striking, then I can get to my takedowns. You know, and if you're just good, then maybe the person won't respect it as much, you know, and the fear isn't there. So I'll always kind of favor more of a grappling, wrestling, jujitsu style specialist, because then I feel like the level of fear is a little more there. A lot of times, striking specialists are now afraid um, of getting taken down, and so it inhibits their striking. You know, but if you're a wrestling, grappling, jujitsu style specialist, um, you know, that other person who maybe has great striking, they're going to be more cautious to strike because they don't want to get taken down. Maybe they have great kicks, but now they don't want to throw their kicks, and so that opens up your opportunity to strike. And then all you have to do is back them up a little bit, and then, you know, you can get in on your takedown game. So it comes down to how you put it all together. But I would definitely say that having a grappling specialist background is ideal, and it's safer. You know what I mean? You can be a specialist in striking, but as soon as you have little gloves on, you can dominate someone on the feet, and they hit you one time, and it's over. So I like to go the safe route and try not to take damage out there.
Yeah, I think you're seeing the specialists are starting to come back to MMA as well with like Khabib, and Izzy's a specialist. I know he's a stand-up guy, but he is a specialist. There's a lot of them. But that's everything I got for you today. Is there anything you want to say before we get you out of here? Let your fans know anything?
No, just you know, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate all the support. You know, I know it's been many months now, but I still get a lot of love from all my supporters around the world, who kind of felt for me in that tough time I had earlier this year, and even just recently when they crowned Musasi. I had people messaging me and just still kind of sending me love and support, knowing that was hard for me to see, and I definitely am not giving up, and I hope to be back out there at least one more time. I'm not getting any younger, but I still feel like I can do some damage out there. So, but that's it. I mean, just anyone else that maybe isn't familiar with me, wants to give me a follow. I'm super easy to find on Instagram, Facebook, and all that. Lovato Junior BJJ is my Instagram handle. Lovato JRBJJ, and I'm here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I have a beautiful academy here. In my office, you can see there's my mats down there. But if anyone's ever in the area and wants to come get on the mats with me here, they're more than welcome. So okbjj.com is how you can find my school.
When the world opens back up, I'm definitely going to make a trip down there.
Please do. Thanks,
All
Marshall.
Right. Thank you very much. We're rooting for you, and best of luck in your journey back to the cage. And everything else you're doing, we'll be paying attention. Thank you a lot for everything you've done.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Take care.